right. Looks like we've got all the directors and all of the staff that will be attending today. So let's go ahead and start the May 18th, 2022 Board of Directors meeting for the Tioga Truckee Sanitation Agency. First on our agenda is call to order, roll call, and pledge of allegiance. Rochelle, could you do a roll call?
Yes. Director Tresson.
Here.
Director Lewis.
Here.
Director Cox.
Yes.
Director Smelser.
Yes.
And President Wilkins.
Present.
Okay, we have a full quorum.
All right, and if the rest of the group could hit mute and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. And I will go ahead and lead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is the AB 361 action. And this would be finding by majority vote that we are going to conduct today's meeting remotely via Zoom in light of the ongoing COVID-19 emergency.
I'll move that we accept the AB 361 action for this board meeting.
And I'll second.
Thank you, Lane. A motion by Director Lewis, second by Director Cox. Any public comment?
We have no public comment on that item.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Rochelle, if you could take roll call.
Yes. Director Tresson.
Yes.
Director Lewis.
Yes.
Director Cox.
Yes.
Director Smelser.
Yes.
And President Wilkins.
Yes.
Okay, motion approved.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to provide comment to the board of directors on any item not on the agenda for up to 5 minutes of time. Is there any public comment, Rochelle?
I have previously submitted written public comment to the board for their consideration. And other than that, we have no other public comment.
Thank you, Rochelle. Go ahead and close public comment, and we'll move on down to item 4, which is professional achievements, awards, and anniversary. And I believe Vicki is going to lead us in this.
Yes, good morning, President Wilkins and directors. This morning, I would like to acknowledge a couple, well, actually just one staff member for 2 different things for his professional achievement, and that would be Jesse Denham, who has received his wastewater treatment operator 2 certification and was therefore promoted to wastewater treatment operator 2. Congratulations to Jesse. I know he's not here right now, but yeah, job well done. And other than that, just always want to congratulate staff and let them know that they're appreciated. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Vicki. Okay, next on our agenda is item 5, which is our consent agenda. We have 2 items on there. One is to ratify payment of the general fund warrants, and the other is to ratify approval of the financial statements.
I'll make the motion that we ratify both. As a member of the finance committee, we've gone over each and every one of them.
Thank you, Lane.
And I'll second that. Okay, go ahead, Blake.
Had a motion by Lane and a second by Director Tresson. I'm assuming no other members of the board would like to pull either of these items. And Rochelle, are there any members of the public who would like to pull any of these items?
I have no hands raised for any public comment or action on that.
Okay, thank you, Rochelle. If there's no further comment by the board, Rochelle, if you could take roll call on the consent calendar.
Yes. Director Tresson.
Yes.
Director Lewis.
Yes.
Director Cox.
Yes.
Director Smelser.
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes,
Motion approved.
thank you. Next on our agenda is a report out from the April 2022 closed session meeting. And LaRue, are you taking this for us?
I'll take this one. Yeah, I just wanted to report at the conclusion of the meeting on April 2022, there was no action taken during closed session.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting on April 20th, 2022. Anyone have any comments or questions on the minutes, or would anyone like to make a motion?
So move approval.
I'll second. Go ahead, Blake.
Motion by Director Smeltzer to approve the minutes, second by Director Trezin. Is there any public comment on the minutes, Rochelle?
I have no public comment for this item.
Okay, thank you. There's no further discussion by the board. Rochelle, if you could take roll call.
Sure. Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes,
Motion approved.
thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of cost of living adjustment and salary schedule for fiscal year 2022, 2023. Is
Do
that
you
you?
mind taking this, Vicky, please?
Oh, Vicky, great.
Good morning again, President Wilkins and directors. Resolution 12-2019 was approved in 2019. And part of that resolution states that COLAs will be, or cost of living adjustments, will be applied to Group B of the salary schedule, and that this will take place annually at the beginning of each fiscal year. Based on that direction of the resolution, which includes a special calculation based on the California CPI, all urban consumers, from February 2021 to February 2022, the COLA is calculated to be 5.95% for employees within Group B of the salary schedule. If approved, the CPI will become effective on July 1st, 2022, which is the beginning of our fiscal year. Any employee in Group A will automatically move to Group B when and if their maximum salary in Group B exceeds that in Group A. Based on the COLA calculation and updating of the salary schedule, 3 job classifications, which includes 6 employees, will be moved from Group A to Group B. And this will leave 11 employees remaining in Group A. Management and staff recommend approval of the cost of living adjustment and salary schedule for fiscal year 22-23. Any questions?
Yeah, this is based on the contract agreement that we have with the employees. Is this the 3rd year or 2nd year of that contract?
It's based on a resolution from 2019. So
Okay.
it was adopted in 19, but it covered 2020. So 2021, this is the 3rd year, 22.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Blake?
Yeah, I think that we should acknowledge, the inflationary times we're in. I think when we adopted the resolution, which was really a, codification of something the district had had for a long time, it seemed like the right move. I don't know that we put a lot of thought into it. Most CPIs we've seen over the past, 10, 20 years fall within that, 3% area, and there hasn't been much, of those throttling of the higher CPIs. We're now in a sort of 40-year high of inflation. The inflation impacts every person differently. Some folks, a large portion of their salary goes towards those costs that are part of the CPI. Some folks, have managed their finances such that maybe not as much of their money goes towards the CPI. I've, done a lot of thinking about, this issue and acknowledge the receipt of the comments from staff, particularly that are on the Y-rated, our salaries that are currently frozen as the COLAs increase, and acknowledge, the hardship that they're experiencing. The board made a commitment to pay salaries at the 75th percentile. Our objective is to be able to recruit and retain, high quality employees, which I think the 75th percentile gives us that objective. There are a number of staff that were paid, some of them significantly above that 75th percentile. And the idea is to, have those salaries at that higher amount. We did not reduce them, but keep them at that amount until COLAs brought everybody to that playing field. And, this inflationary period, I know it's hard for them, but, it does reduce the time frame for them to get off that Y-rated Schedule A. I've bounced around on what's, the best thing. It's hard to see this inflation and not see any increase to your salary. I just want staff to know, and the board members know, it's not an easy decision. I've thought about a bunch of different possible options, but at the end of the day, I think that the program we have in place is probably the fiscally prudent measure, and again, gets us hopefully to the point where everybody can get COLAs in the not too distant future as well. And so I just wanted to share some of my thoughts on this. We're not in, that we're kind of in outlying period, hopefully without a recession happening. Inflation can get under control, in the months to come as well. So looking to see if there's anything else. No, that's pretty much my comments.
Thank you, Blake. Lane, looks like you've got a comment.
Yeah,
I got-
I mean, we discussed, Blake and I were discussing this in the finance committee, and you're going to see in next month's proposals. I mean, obviously the salaries and wages are our largest operational item. And I mean, it's a significant impact to the bottom line of the district. And those take a look, directors, at that cost is huge. We have to keep, our employees are our most valuable asset. We have to take care of the employees, the different, as Blake said, the different impacts, because, half of our employees are driving up from Reno. I mean, that it's $6.50 gas. That is a major impact to them. But we're still being able to recruit out of there, which is great. So it's just the cost of doing business is going to increase significantly, board, with this 5.95. When you're looking at almost $6 million in salaries and wages, and we haven't got on to any acceleration in the benefit package yet, but that will be coming also.
Thanks, Lane. Dale?
Yeah, I've had a little bit of heartburn over this, and I think that Blake is right on track with what he's saying. This inflation being at a 40-year high is affecting everybody, and for us to sit back and hold back part of the cost of living index from a portion of the employees, I'm having a little heartburn over it, because this inflation affects everybody, in both groups. And I was hoping that we could figure out a way that we could bring the salaries into compliance with the wage survey that we did. You said that there's still 11 employees that are overpaid according to our survey. LaRue, is there any way going into the future that we can bring these 11 employees back to the normal standard in the future and be able to let everybody have the same COLA raise as far as for, I just, like I say, everybody's paying the same for gas, everybody's paying the same for groceries. It affects us all in the same way. And to hold back, I'm having a little bit of a problem with it because I think there's another way that we can get these salaries adjusted and bring them into line without penalizing some of our employees with a lesser cost of living index.
So Dale, when we went through this conversation a couple of years ago now, we did the salary survey. It was a very extensive effort. We looked at other agencies, compared our salaries to others, marked our salaries at the 75th percentile, which is, kind of erring on the side of paying more as opposed to paying less. Through that process, what we found was that we had some positions that were paid at the 100th percentile or even higher, right? And what we could have done at that time, which I would not have supported, is we could have said, okay, everyone gets a pay cut that's above that 75th percentile. That wouldn't have been appropriate.
No.
But if we had done that, then now everyone would be getting a COLA adjustment because everything would have been reset to that 75th percentile. Instead, what we put in place was I'll call it a phasing in of trying to get those salaries back to the 75th percentile where they were above it. So the way we were doing that was we did two things. One was to say, we're not going to adjust the salary range on those employees that are above the 75th percentile. They're effectively going to be capped. But as their range approaches the 75th percentile and gets to the 75th percentile, then COLAs will kick back in. The other thing we did is we put in the provision for non-base pay compensation, which I don't believe existed previously. So what that did is when we got, it basically said, hey, if you're one of those employees that is at the top of your range and you don't have the ability to get COLA, we're going to give you the ability to get an annual kind of one-time payment, almost like a bonus check for good performance, as an offset to the fact that they would not be getting the COLA adjustment. So in my mind, we hit a reasonable balance there. If we now change course and just say, you know what, just kidding, for those employees that are above that 75th percentile, we're going to go ahead and award the COLA, then we're never going to get those positions back to the 75th percentile until people retire from those positions, and then they get backfilled at the lower salary range. So I think that's realistically what we're looking at. If we're just going to change the decision we made before, it means we just keep giving COLA adjustments indefinitely, and then wait until those positions turn over to get them back to the 75th percentile.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Dan, and I remember when we adopted this resolution. However, that resolution was adopted 2 years ago, and we had no idea that we were going to be facing the inflation that we're facing now. And, you know, I was just hoping that there would be a way that we could modify the resolution 12/2019 to be able to see to it that everybody that's been affected by this inflation could get some equality as far as for, you know, the pain that everybody is suffering. And I was hoping that there'd be a way that we could be able to adjust the wages of the higher paid people in another manner other than holding back the cost of living index.
Well, you know, Dale, I mean, if you did a COLA there, you know, the COLA is a compounding effect every year. And you're never going to get up to, I mean, that above the 75 percentile. I mean, in those areas where we're paying 100 to 125% of the, you know, of the wage, you know, you're just going to exacerbate the thing. I think the method that we're using is at least giving those people, you know, an incentive as that 5% bonus. It doesn't compound, which is ideal, but it keeps the wage there. But they do have an incentive to perform also, and that's a good thing as far as the morale of the employees. As far as a guy being stuck in or gal being stuck in a position that they can't increase their salary, yet they're doing exceptional work, we need to compensate them for that. And I think the way that we did that in 218 and 219 was very being able to you know, foresee the future. And when you get a high inflationary period that we're in, I mean, look at, I mean, it was between 1.2% and almost 2.1% for how many years? Now we get hit with this large increase. You know, I think we are properly taking care of our employees. One item of the inflationary costs that we are taking care of it is in the benefit package with the health insurance. So at least they don't have that also to contend with.
I understand what you're saying, Lane. I got a question for LaRue. With the procedure that we have in place and the conditions that we have existing today, do you feel that there's going to be any heartburn at all with some of these 11 employees?
When you say heartburn, I don't know.
Is there going to be some undertone and some discontent about how this year's cost of living index is being parlayed out to the employees?
Yeah, I think there's going to be some disappointment. Like you said, they're dealing with the same inflation impacts as everybody else. So of course, I feel there's going to be some disappointment. Is it going to rise to the level to where I think there's going to be complete turmoil? I do not. They're good staff. I think they understand the situation. I think they're just requesting that the board evaluate it and consider an opportunity to provide a COLA to them. Every conversation I've had with individual, they were respectful, understood it. They were just asking for the board's assistance if possible.
So you've had dialogue with the 11 employees that are affected by this resolution?
No, I haven't had direct dialogue with the 11 employees. I've heard through the hallways and through conversations with other people who have had conversations. But I think it's reasonable to expect that they would like to have a COLA as well.
Yes, that's what I could only imagine. And you know, I hate to be the ogre in this item on the agenda, but you know, given the fact that we've had a lot of heartburn from the board and management in regards to you know, what's been happening with the employees, and I just want to minimize, LaRue, the amount of employees that will sit back and question our judgment as directors that we're not being fair and equitable across the board. That's an issue that I would hate to sit back and have thrown into my lap that I'm not being fair and equitable across the board as, you know, as a director. And I understand where this all is, but once again, I'm just a little bit gun shy of 11 employees being handled differently, even though they're being paid in their salaries a little bit higher than you know, the average across the board. So I'll go along with what the rest of you's, you know, decide that you want to do. But like I say, I'm having a little problem with it.
Dave, looks like you got a comment.
Yeah, I was saying that, you know, this decision was made 3 years ago when you weren't looking at this kind of inflation. And this is hopefully a one-time event. Is it possible to have a one-time event with the COLA this year because of excessive inflation?
So, yeah, so I think the answer is yes. I think what we need to think about as a board is how do we want to extend the time period where we have employees that have the exact same job, but that have different salary ranges,
Yeah,
right? So I'm looking at the customer service specialist 2.
Yeah,
So if you're a customer service specialist 2 who was hired before 2018, you've got the ability to make up to $46 an hour. If you're a customer service specialist 2 who was hired after 2018, you've got the ability to make up to $34 an hour. So, you know, equity cuts both ways, right? So an employee who's not getting a COLA right now is like, well, gee, that doesn't feel fair because I'm not getting a COLA, whereas my counterparts are. The person who was hired after 2019 could say, well, it doesn't feel fair to me that, you know, my salary range caps out at $35 an hour, but the person that was hired a year before me caps out at $46 an hour, right? So, yeah, so I think that argument can cut both ways depending on kind of where you are when you were hired and where you fall. So, you know, if we were to do like this year, say, hey, we're just going to give everyone a COLA adjustment, what we're also doing is extending the time period that inequity exists between people that were hired before and after, before a certain date versus after a certain date. By kind of sticking with the program we came up with a couple of years ago, it moves us closer to internal equity sooner than if we do like a one-time, hey, we're going to give everyone a COLA. So I think we should be thinking about that piece of the piece of information as well.
so,
Well, you know, like I say, the employees have been living with this inequity for a number of years. And when we did the salary survey, it brought all this to a realization. And, you know, the employees that were hired before, was it 2019? What was the cutoff date there? What for the difference in employees?
I think it was around 2019, Dale.
2019. You know, they've been living with it for 3 years, and I haven't heard or haven't seen anybody complain about living with that inequity. And all I'm asking you guys is, and LaRue, is there any way that we can sit back and get equity within the classifications in the future and be able to give everybody the same cost of living bump, because like I say, this is something that is very unusual. We've never dealt with it before. It affects everybody to the same. And if we have to move equity down the road more years to get parity along the lines of our employees, I'm okay with that. But the way I'm seeing it is this inflation has affected everybody across the board. And I want to be fair to all the employees. And I think that we should just sit back and take a look at this rather than going on a resolution we passed 3 years ago.
Blake?
So, I expressed my feeling that I thought Plan A was adopt the COLA as proposed and adopted by the board. I had a Plan B. I'm hearing, Dave and Dale bring it up. It costs us, the agency more money to adopt it, but, my sort of Plan B was, that we say, hey, this is a one-time event. We deviate from our resolution. We say, instead of all staff receiving the 5.95, we say, you know what? We didn't anticipate CPIs to go up that much. We give basically the full CPI, California CPI, which would be 7.4%. So that's an extra 1.45%. And we give that 1.45 also to the Y-rated staff, so that that 5.95 difference stays there. We don't reduce the time for them to eventually come into coordination. I don't know whether 1.45 really, is going to meet the needs of the staff, and then, probably not going to be very popular amongst a lot of the faces I see on this Zoom. But, I indicated that the CPI and cost of living and inflation affects different people differently. And I've heard of agencies that, potentially implement tiered CPIs. Not everybody gets the same CPI because different people are affected differently. Lower wage earners, more of their money is actually used for those package of goods that are in the CPI. And so sort of my Plan B, if the board wants to entertain this, would be to give actually a 7.4 to non-Y-rated, non-management staff. The managers, and there's 5 of you, and you're all on the picture here, would get that 5.95%, and the Y-rated would get 1.45. This sort of shares the wealth a little bit. More to the, again, non-management, non-Y-rated, they get another 1.45%, get the full California CPI. Management team is still getting almost a 6% CPI, and those that are Y-rated get 1.45 to make up for that, additional impact of this inflationary period. And so there's a little bit there to help them out as well. Again,
I got a real problem with that from the standpoint, our fiduciary responsibilities to the public also. And when you're looking at paying somebody, 100 to 125% and being up in that percentile, are we being financially responsible and creating more inequity between the classifications? I mean, these things all compound, and to bring this whole system was to bring people in line equitably by not cutting those people that were above that higher percentile, but leaving those in place and giving them that, I believe it was 5, is it 5%, LaRue, on the,
Yeah.
5%. If we're talking about giving that higher amount, we're never going to create an equitable situation. You have that $34 an hour person doing the same job as 46, and it doesn't it doesn't compute as far as you're going to create a larger margin because these salaries compound. And you know, if I'm a carpenter out there in the world, and you know, somebody's doing a same job as me, and I'm getting paid less, it's not equitable. We're looking at the lower class, not the lower class, the lower paid employee as far as coming up to equity. And I think that's very important, and by what we laid out in 2019. We do have a fiduciary responsibility to the public, and are we going to pay above market value for a position that we've been overpaid for?
I get it, but I don't agree with it all that much. But, you know, that's what makes a board. You know, we can discuss this kind of stuff. And my issue is I don't want discontent of any kind within the rank and file, you know, and you know, it can be a lot of heartburn for the management and the supervisors if they have to deal with a bunch of employees that aren't happy with the decisions we make. And so that's my concern. And if LaRue feels that he can manage the discontent, and Michael Peets and everybody else that's in the supervisory role can handle the discontent, then you know, I'm only a half a vote. That's all.
Yeah, don't forget though, on this thing, the benefit package at 50% of this salaries is helping out with some of the inflationary costs that those employees are having to experience too. So that helps out quite a bit.
Yeah, I think your point, Lane, is to the extent that health insurance costs could be going up 10, 15, or 20%. We as the agency are absorbing all of that for the employees and the entirety of their families, as an example. And then the PERS contributions, those continue to go up to the extent that PERS may be losing money because of a declining stock market this year. That's on us to cover that for the employee. So I think that's your point, Lane, is there are areas where we're covering 100% of the inflationary cost of our employees. On the wage side, we've got this group of 11 employees whose pay range exceeds, and in some instances far exceeds, that 75th percentile. And I work for a boss too. The more money my boss is willing to give me, hey, that's great. The flip side is I also understand that, if I'm getting paid disproportionately more than a coworker of mine who was, and it's just because they were hired a year or two later, I can appreciate the rationale behind wanting to get back to internal parity. So different employees are going to look at that differently. Some employees may look at it from a standpoint of, okay, I get it. Others may look at it from a standpoint of this doesn't feel fair. At the end of the day, I agree with Lane. I think we put the program in place a couple of years ago. It was well thought out. There was a good rationale for it, and I think we just need to stay the course with it. So I'm in favor of just sticking with the staff recommendation, which reflects the board direction from 2 years ago.
So who's going to make the motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve the 5.95 COLA for the Class B employees, and as presented in the 2019 salary adjustment.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded, moved by Director Lewis, seconded by Director Trezin. Is there any public comment on this item, Rochelle?
All public comment was previously provided for this item, and I do not have anyone else with their hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you, Rochelle.
Mhm.
Is there any further board discussion before we go to roll call? Seeing none, Rochelle, if you could go to roll call, please.
Yes, Director Trezin,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes, with concern.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes.
Okay, motion approved.
All right, thank you, everyone. That was a good discussion.
Thank you.
It's good to hear the different perspectives on that, and good to come to a resolution on it. Thank you. Next on the agenda is item 6-5, which would be approval to solicit bids for the 2022 digital scanning of sewer lines project.
I think it should be 4.
Oh, did I miss one?
Yeah, 4. But we'll have Jay Parker take those. I think they're both in his wheelhouse. So do you
Oh,
mind?
I apologize. I was looking. So yeah, we've got item 6-4, approval to reject bids for the 2022 plant improvement project.
Do you mind addressing that, Jay, please?
Yep, no problem. Good morning, President Wilkins, directors. Speaking of rising costs, we have an agenda item here where we presented a project to the board a couple months ago for a project to install an effluent flow meter on our effluent pipeline and a 2-water system improvement, which entails replacing some valves in our yard. And this project was put out to bid. 2 bids were received on April 14. One was $405,192. The other bid was $537,000. The engineer's estimate originally had been less, in the neighborhood of 150 to 175. On account of the bidding climate, we increased that to 225 prior to bid. And as you can see, bids came in at almost double what our engineer's estimate was. So the recommendation is for to reject all bids for the 2022 plan improvements project. The agency has the capability and ability, interest in doing this work with our own forces for a lot less capital.
I gotta ask you, Jay, obviously you feel that our personnel is capable of making these changes. How about their workload and work schedule? Are we going to be putting other issues on the back burner to move this issue forward? How is the scheduling and workload going to be for these mechanics that are going to be asked to perform this this project?
So this decision wasn't made in a vacuum. We had met as managers and kicked around the alternatives. One was pursuing this work, at these prices, and the other one was doing the work with our own forces. And the answer was that we believe that Richard was assured the team that we could do the work with our own forces. Richard, do you have anything you want to add on that?
Just to add support to what you were saying, President Cox. Yeah, we're looking at pushing the job later into the fall for us to actually do the work. So with that in mind, we'll be moving into the fall season. Will we have to readjust things? Absolutely, because we're pretty much always fully loaded with work to do, but it doesn't mean that we can't reprioritize and fit this in. And I just want to add in that we're going to be doing the flow meter. We won't be doing the vault and the valves that were part of this original project, that would be a little bit out of our scope of what we could reasonably do, but we can do the flow meter. It's a very straightforward job, and we have the expertise in-house to do that.
Thank you, Lane.
Yeah, what were, Richard, what were the capital costs of the equipment as far as the needed, I mean, the flow meter? I mean, what did the flow meter, what's that cost?
I'm not sure. I'll defer to Jay as far as what the contractor's dollar amount is fixed to the flow meter was, but as we scope the project for materials and a new flow meter, we're budgeting $75,000 to do the work.
So, I mean, I got to applaud staff and everybody to do interior, to do the work with staff on it, as long as it could be done in a reasonable manner. The ownership is far greater than an outside contractor. And I just want to encourage the staff looking at these projects. If there is a possibility for us to do it in-house, we always get a better job. You guys are professional and you guys get the job done, and you also have the ownership of that project. And I appreciate you guys taking a look at it and doing it in-house.
Thank you.
Thanks. Other questions or comments from board members? Any public comment on this, Rochelle?
There's no public comment for this item.
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion to recommend that staff reject all bids for the plant improvement project and execute the projects with in-house staff.
So
thanks,
moved.
Dale.
Second.
Motion by Director Cox, second by Director Lewis. And losing my mind, did we take public comment on this? We just did, right?
We did, yes.
So if there's no further comments by the board, Rochelle, if you could take roll call.
Yes. Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes,
Motion approved.
thank you. Next on our agenda is approval to solicit bids for the 2022 digital scanning of sewer lines project.
Okay, do you mind taking that as well, please?
Of course. So yeah, again, as we do every year, we will be digitally scanning the TRI this fall. This fall's scope is schedules 1 and 2, which is that most upstream third of the TRI, spanning the distance between Taos City and Bridge 6. In addition, there's a segment of Schedule 3 that we need to pick up that we were not able to scan last year. The total length is about 37,000 feet, ranging from 24 to 36-inch diameter, both RCP and ductile iron pipe. Field work slated between September 6th and October 14th. Our estimate for this project is $195,000. And the recommendation is for approval to solicit bids for the 2022 digital scanning of sewer lines project.
Thank you, Jay. Lane?
Yeah, Jay, did we, on that project last year on the Schedule 3 part of it, did they take off that amount of lineal footage on what they did do last year? And are you adding that to this year? Is that part of this bid?
Yeah, so both
We
contracts.
didn't pay for it twice, right?
No, both contracts are actually unit price contracts, so we only pay on the footage that we receive.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so there's
That's a question.
yeah,
All
there's
right,
no
thanks.
loss.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, is there any public comment, Rochelle?
There's no public comment for this item.
I'll move approval for the TRI's digital scanning of the sewer line project for Schedules 1, 2, and part of 3.
Thank you, Lane.
I'll second.
Motion by Director Lewis, second by Director Smelser. There's no further board comment. Rochelle, if you could take roll call, please.
Okay. Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Blake, I see you've got the raise hand icon up. I didn't skip over you inadvertently, did I?
No, is my hand up?
Oh, you know what? Never mind. It's the cursor on my computer screen that looks like a hand that happened to be over your icon. I apologize.
No worries.
Let's see. Next on the agenda is item 6-6, which is approval to award bids for the procurement of hydrated lime, liquid oxygen, liquid sodium hydroxide, methanol, hydrochloric acid, and liquid chlorine.
Did you mind taking this one, Michael?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, President Wilkins, Board of Directors. This is our annual soliciting bids for the procurement of the hydrated lime, liquid oxygen, liquid sodium hydroxide, methanol, hydrochloric acid, liquid chlorine for the upcoming fiscal year 22-23. We have a breakdown here to show you the lowest bid. Responsive bidder is indicated by the asterisk next to the bidder's name per chemical. The fiscal impact is going to be dependent on the quantity of chemical purchased. In the following table, we have a table here that provides a summary comparison of the current and upcoming fiscal costs on agreement listed quantities. It should be noted negative values indicated decrease in overall costs. Ferric chloride is not in the comparison as there was no responsive bidder for that chemical this year. So when comparing the fiscal impact for current and upcoming fiscal years, the agency will see an increase of approximately $211,000 for the fiscal year 22-23. The recommendation of management and staff is to approve and award bids for the procurement of hydrated lime, liquid oxygen, liquid sodium hydroxide, methanol, hydrochloric acid, and liquid chlorine to the appropriate lowest responsive bidder. Any questions?
Looks like Lane's got a question.
Yeah, Michael, I'm looking at, you have a 211,000 increase. What percentage increase is that over last year? Because I'm not seeing any of last year's prices as just the bid prices for this year. Is that a 5, 8, 10% increase for those, for the hydrated lime, oxygen, whatever? What percentage increase is that?
So if you just take the cost, the unit costs, you can see that, for instance, liquid chlorine is almost double. It's about 80% increase on liquid chlorine, which was the highest one.
Yeah.
But the average overall increase, I believe, is about 40 or 50%.
Okay, because in the budget discussions, Blake, these were one of the costs that we were talking about as far as for the 22-23 budget period that we have to make adjustments for, and knowing those percentage costs with all the other inflationary costs that we're going to be incurring, it's going to be looking at a substantial deficit operational wise compared to this current year. Just for the board's edification on all these costs, whether you go salaries, materials, power, utilities. I mean, we're gonna see some substantial operating increased costs.
Right. Thanks, Lane. Blake.
Yeah, so good questions, Lane. Yeah, I mean, clearly, when it comes to these chemicals, we're seeing significantly higher than CPI inflation, well over the 7.4 California CPI, or up to 10 on some of the other ones. So pretty substantial. discouraging despite that increase to see, single bidders on these, not even getting competitive bids. And Mike, I'm not in this arena at all. The names ring a bell because we see Univar and LaHoist and Thatcher come up on the monthly warrants that we pay. When you go out and solicit bids for this, do we advertise and look for people to come in, or do you actively go out and get quotes from them? And, are there any other players out there? I mean, do we really beat the bush, to make sure that, we're truly getting, these are, the net price is $211,000 more. Probably we're over, $1 million in all told of these things. So it's not insubstantial, and, just want to make sure we're, doing our due diligence to really get the best pricing we can.
So yes, we do. We go out to solicitation for bid. We have multiple vendors that we send the solicitation to bid to. We have a list of vendors that are to supply these specific chemicals in this area, and as far away as we can, that's still reasonable for trucking. Some of the chemicals do come out of Texas. Just for instance, last year we had a couple of force majeures that came through. There was a lot of some of the storms that had hit some of these refineries and facilities back east. Saw some hardship. So I think some of these costs were passed on because of other things other than just the, some of it's still lingering from COVID, and where we had some issues with PVC manufacturing, and like the liquid chlorine was being used for PVC manufacturing. So there's a lot of factors I think that came into play with these increases that weren't just the cost of living, but we do advertise, and these are the Thatcher, who used to be Sierra Chemical. Thatcher basically bought up Sierra Chemical years ago. They were one of our big chemical providers. But yes, we do go out for competitive bidding. And this list doesn't show everybody who bid. So there was some non-responsive bids that we did not put, or people who just did not do a bid, even though that the documentation went to them. That just doesn't show up on here.
Thanks, Mike. And I don't mean to, I hope I'm not offending you by asking these questions.
Oh, no.
I just want to make sure we're being prudent. Do you ever reach out? I mean, I assume these chemicals are sort of somewhat ubiquitously used in our industry. And do you touch base with your, counterparts, in Reno or down in Sacramento, the other treatment plants, to see who they're getting it from, so that we, make sure we don't miss a new vendor that's, got it on the market and providing a better price. Just, again, making sure we're doing all our due diligence.
Yeah, in the past, I have not reached out to Reno Sparks, other than the fact that most of their chemicals they're getting from the same providers that we receive from. I have had those conversations. A lot of their chemicals come from, I think they get their methanol from Univar, just like we do. So, and then Linde, the liquid oxygen, there's only a couple of providers of liquid oxygen. So some of that's limited, but yes, most of the people in this area are kind of dealing with these same vendors.
Okay. Just encouraging you to make sure you beat those bushes really hard and make sure we're getting all possible vendors. Last question was just, it's such an anomaly. You've got 5 chemicals that are all going up substantially, and then hydrochloric acid for some reason has gone from 360 per ton down to 222, almost a 50% reduction. Did you get any story behind why that one chemical is,
Yeah, so we were not under contract for because we don't use very much. The overall usage for that is kind of low for us. So in the past, we weren't going out to bid. So we were just procuring the chemical through a vendor. So this year we decided that it would be a good year to try to get some competitive bidding, and it did make a difference. So moving forward, we'll make sure that we're doing that in the future.
well, good. That's a good story. I appreciate you sharing that with me, us.
Thanks, Blake. Lane?
Yeah, don't forget, I mean, Michael, I'm seeing the exact same thing you're seeing. 35 to 40% cost increase just in transportation costs between the cost of labor and the cost of fuel to get the product there. And then you have all the other supply issues beyond that is why we're seeing these increases. So it's just not, you know, I'm seeing it in the exact same thing that you guys are seeing it, and those percentages are right there.
Thanks, Lane. Other questions or comments from board members? Is there any public comment on this, Rochelle?
There's no public comment for this item.
Thank you. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Moved by Director Trezin, seconded by Director Lewis to approve the award of bids for the procurement of the various chemicals and substances that we just discussed.
Dan, if you don't mind, Mike, what is your plan with regards to ferric chloride that you said you couldn't even get a bid? I imagine if it was something bid, it's you guys have a substantial demand for it. So how will you?
That's the next
item, Blake.
Oh, the next item. I'm sorry. There's a good segue.
Yeah.
It is. Thank
You're
you.
ahead of the game.
Rochelle, could you take roll call, please?
Yes, of course. Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes. I just wanted to confirm there was no public comment on that last item.
That is correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Motion approved.
Okay, item 7, approval to negotiate a contract for the procurement of ferric chloride.
Michael, do you mind?
Yes, I would. Thank you. Again, good morning, President Wilkins and the board. A little bit of background. The agency did solicit a bid to purchase the hydrated lime, liquid oxygen, liquid sodium hydroxide, methanol, ferric chloride, hydrochloric acid, and the liquid chlorine for the upcoming year 22-23. However, there were no responsive bids submitted for the ferric chloride. The agency's purchasing policy established in TTSA's ordinance number 3-2015. If no responsive bids are received by the bid deadline, the board may authorize the work to be performed by negotiated contract or contracts with qualified contractor or contractors. The agency can re-advertise and rebid for the procurement of ferric chloride or negotiate with contractor. Due to time constraints, it would be more beneficial to negotiate the procurement with the contractor, since we're coming up at June 30th will be the end of our contract now. Fiscal impacts, of course, will depend on the negotiated price and the quantity purchased. And the recommendation is that management and staff management and staff recommend approval to negotiate a contract for procurement of ferric chloride for the fiscal year 22-23.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, is there any public comment, Michelle?
There is no public comment for this item.
Okay, would anyone care to make a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Director Cox, and I think I saw a second by Director Smeltzer.
Yes.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, Rochelle, if you could take the roll call.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is discussion and possible vote for a special district representative for the Placer County LAFCO. Rue?
Thank you. As you know, last month, Placer LAFCO requested some nominations for some representatives to fulfill the special district representative seat. 4 nominees were chosen, as listed in the staff write-up here. And they've asked that we as a special district provide a vote. And the recommendation we have here is for Mr. Rick Stevens, who is part of the Truckee-Ottawa Airport District, to fulfill that position. So the recommendation is to vote for him. In the staff report are bios for each of the candidates. Mr. Stevens currently is sitting on the Ottawa Airport District Board. He was elected in 2016 and re-elected in 2020. And he was the president of that board back in 2018 and 2019. And he currently is elected as the alternative on the Placer LAFCO board. So with that, I can take any questions.
Thank you,
As
LaRue.
long as we don't have a conflict of interest with Rick Stevens with our negotiations with the airport district in the land exchange. I think I asked this question last month and council said that we're good to go. Is that still the case?
That is still the case. No conflict.
Thank you, Dale. Any other question? Blake?
Yeah, if Dale, did you just make the motion or?
No, I just.
You just asked a
had
question?
question.
It was, it's heartening to see a good cast of candidates. Gordon Ainsley, if that's how you say his name, certainly had a entertaining, interesting document there about his history. But if we're okay, I'll go ahead and make the motion. I think Rick has proven himself to be a good steward of the public and would be a good representative and LAFCO from the special districts. So I'll make a motion to nominate Rick.
I'll second
that.
So motion by Director Trezin, second by Director Cox. Is there any public comment on this item, Rochelle?
There's no public comment on this item.
Okay, if there's no further comments by the directors, if you could take the roll call, Rochelle?
Director Treston,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is discussion of in-person board of directors meetings.
Thank you. This is a standing board agenda item to make the determination how we'd like to proceed at next month's board of directors meeting. With the continuing cases of COVID-19 attributed to the subvariants of Omicron, my recommendation is that we proceed next month with an AB 31 compliance meeting, meaning a Zoom. Then next month, again, we would reassess how we'd like to proceed the following month.
I concur with that. I think that it's a good motion. We don't know. I mean, Northern California, San Francisco area gets seeing a little spike there. Plus, we do save money. I mean, we don't get Dick's transportation costs coming up here every period of time. So it's a good thing. I can't wait though to meet in person again. So, but under the circumstances that we currently face, I would recommend that we continue on with AB 361. And that's my motion.
I'll second.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Director Lewis and a second by Director Cox to continue with virtual board meetings. Is there any further board discussion on that? Seeing none, is there any public comment, Rochelle?
There's no public comment on this item.
Okay, thank you. With that, this does not require action at this point.
No action.
Thank you. Next is management team report, and we'll start out with department reports and the operations department.
Morning again, President Wilkins and Board of Directors. For the operations department report for the month of April, all plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month. The plant performed well through the month. Sodium hydroxide was added to the effluent to maintain a 7.0 set point on the pH. We advertised and received bids for the fiscal year 22-23 chemicals. Performed a plant effluent shutdown to facilitate maintenance work on the Clino decommissioning project. Laboratory staff performed necessary laboratory testing. Laboratory information system LIMS implementation is ongoing. The expected completion date is June 22. Staff continue to prepare for the lab quality manual, and they're about 60% complete for T&I. And you can see the flows. And is there any questions? That's it for the operations report.
Yeah, Michael, on the monthly average daily flow, you know, we're not seeing any, I mean, that thing's been pretty darn consistent as far as keeping with the same MGD the last few years. So the only reason we're getting spikes, we get spikes are those big stow years with the I&I. So, you know, plant's performing well. I think with Carrillo's report stating that capacity is in a 25-year period, what they looked at is well within our means with the existing plant that we have, that we don't have to do anything for increased capacity. So those numbers just reflect the Carrillo report.
Thanks, Lane. Any other questions or comments from board members? Seeing none.
I got one other question with regards to the caustic lime. I know that's 850 tons a year that we're averaging, and that's how much is that to take down the effluent when it leaves the plant? Is that all of it?
The sodium hydroxide addition?
Yeah. Well, the caustic lime.
What's the
The
question?
The caustic lime that we use to reduce the pH of the water coming out of the plant before it gets into the SAT system.
So that's sodium hydroxide, and that's actually used
Right.
to increase the pH a little bit.
Right.
We're going from about a 6.6, 6.7 to a 7. So it's a few parts. The overall usage for the year anticipated is 120 tons.
Okay.
To maintain that 7.0 pH.
Mike,
Yeah,
I think Lane's question is what percentage of the 120 tons is the liquid sodium hydroxide for that one purpose, or is that all 120 tons for that purpose? Is there no other plant use of sodium hydroxide?
It's 100% used to maintain the 7 on the effluent.
Okay. I mean, do you see any reduction in that coming forth? I mean, we're taking it down. I mean, we're raising it up, and I mean, the SAT system's working well. I mean, if we reduce it a little bit, would we see a spike in the pH?
Would we see a reduction in the SAT?
Correct.
I don't know. We've actually run it without any sodium hydroxide and not noticed much of a decrease. So,
Because when we don't use it, we're right on the borderline on the pH. Correct.
yeah, even when we're using it, we're on the borderline sometimes.
Even when we're using it. Okay. I know with, Richard Sevich's studies 20 years ago with regards to the, implementation of the different chemicals into that SAT and how it affects the bugs in the system and reduces the nitrogen coming down, absorption through the SATs. Just trying to get some clarification on how much that caustic lime does affect it. So
what the impact of the sodium hydroxide is on the
Right.
SAT system, yeah. And it's a really hard to validate what the impact is because of other influences from above ground waters coming in that, you know, can change. So it's a hard thing to put your finger on top of and say, yes, it is or is not benefiting.
Right. I'm just looking
But it-
at, you know, with the
But
cost.
it is a cost to the agency as well. So, and it went up this year, so.
Okay, well, just keep an eye on it and look at and keep good data on it and see what the long-term effects are going to be. I mean, if we can see a reduction and still meet all plant discharge requirements and not going to the bottom line to our meeting it, but you know, we have a little gap in there might be sufficient, but just keep an eye on it.
Will do.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments on the operations department reports? Seeing none, let's move to the maintenance department. Mr. Palante.
Morning, President Wilkins, Board of Directors. So you see the work order numbers for the month. Backlog is holding pretty steady. We have had a few jobs over the last month that have required extensive staff hours, and some of those are represented in the photos that are part of the presentation this morning. So with that, I'll go to the next slide, please. So some of the projects that we've been working on continue to support the upcoming roofing project, coating project. We discussed the influent meter project this morning earlier. LIMS implementation with the laboratory for the IT department. And then we've started off with a major plant cleanup. Some of the photos below, you can see the scrap metal bin that was being delivered and went out full with a little over 70,000 pounds of scrap metal, and we're working on a second one. Continue to work on LED lighting throughout the facility. Lucity continues. Logically implementation, we've wrapped up the server upgrade, and we're continuing to work on our new firewall upgrade with them. Next slide, please. Here's a few photos of the LED lighting upgrades in the emergency generator room and the switchgear room. Next slide. One thing I'm happy to announce is the security camera project is closed out, and that's all completed and up and running. A photo of one of the solar powered lights or cameras that's on the chlorine building. And then one of the other project that's been ongoing is our shop relocation. So the mechanical crew is in their new shop area, and now the E&I staff are working on their new home, which will then free up the space for IT to move into their new workshop. So with that, if there's any questions or comments.
Thank you, Richard. Blake.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. I appreciate the pictures. With regard to your security camera system, how your server keeps records for how long?
It has the ability to keep it for years. I think we're still, now that we're up and running, we're still working on a retention policy to finalize how much we want to retain, but the actual physical ability of the servers to store the video is quite lengthy. So,
is that cloud storage?
No, it is on-prem. So we have the servers are on site.
Thank you.
No other questions. Thanks, Richard.
Okay. Any questions or comments from any other board members? All right, seeing none, next would be the engineering department report with Mr. Parker.
Good morning, everybody again. Projects under construction. We have the chlorine scrubber improvements project, the roof repair, and the plant coating project. In bid phase, we have the control room upgrades project. That one is contracting per discussions at last board meeting. The plant improvements project was discussed today, and as well as the digital scanning of sewer lines project. Next slide, please. And then a couple on development, the digestion improvement study is in study phase, and the 2022 filter influent condition assessment project is also in study phase. Any questions?
Yeah, I got a question, Jay, with regards to the digestion improvement project. Are you seeing anything from our consultant that that we should be aware of as far as the digestion component?
Well, there's two concepts being evaluated. One is a replacement of the boilers in the existing space versus the alternative of building a new facility for the new boilers, and that basically gets tied up into things like constructability, staging, sequencing, code requirements, etc. So nothing to report just yet on any final conclusions there. We do anticipate in a future board meeting presenting results of the findings.
Yeah, I'm looking at those boilers. As far as removing those boilers to a new area, that'd be quite costly.
Yeah, it would be more expensive, but then you also look at, there may be some pretty significant costs incurred with respect to retrofitting and making the existing space usable for those boilers from a lot of different fronts. So that's what's being weighed and balanced right now is which is the most practical, affordable alternative.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Lane. Any questions or comments from other board members? All right, seeing none, administrative department report.
Good morning, everybody. So in the finance department, we're still working on wrapping up the 2021 audit. And we had the finance committee meeting on May 11th. Next slide, Michelle, please. In the billing department, we did not have any inspections. We have 22 residential permit connection fees, 2 addition square foot, 3 accessory dwelling unit, and 1 commercial. And we did not have any new residential service charge additions, connections. Next slide. And then continuing to have conversations with LaRue and the finance committee on investing in funding and working on the 23 budget. And that is it for our department.
Thank you, Crystal. Any questions or comments on the admin department report?
Yeah, one thing that's consistent, Crystal, is the 1% increase a year in connections. It's not quite the 1%, but it's the one. We are getting a 1% increase in revenue. So with about a 0.67 or 0.68 increase in connections every year. But you are always, for budget purposes, you always budget. We've been budgeting 1%, but actually 1% revenue increase, but not actual increase in connections. But so what I'm saying is we're getting a higher cost per connection that we have in the past, which is keeping that 1% up there. Is that correct?
Yes, generally, I mean, in looking at that recently, it is generally the 1%. Okay. It seems to be the 1%.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lane. Any other, Blake?
I'll just comment that it's been very productive working with Crystal and LaRue and the finance committee, both on routine financial matters as well as developing the budget for next year. And so pass that on. It's been a really productive operation, and Lane as well. So I'm glad we formed this finance committee. I think it's bringing, I'm certainly learning a lot, and I think it's bring value to the agency.
Thanks, Blake.
Yeah, I just want to say, Crystal, you've been doing an outstanding job of educating both Blake and I on certain aspects of the budget and how it's being developed. And board, get ready for 22-23, because there's going to be some substantial changes within the proposed budget over this past year, as you can see just by the items we've discussed already. So We're looking at everything here, so be ready for a substantial increase in operational costs.
Thanks, Lane. Any other questions or comments from the board on the admin department report?
I would just like to add that, Michelle has been quite a support for the finance committee and getting financials turned around very quickly and getting questions answered. And I wanted to make sure that it's known that she's done a really good job and has been working very hard to make sure we meet the deadlines for the finance committee.
Thank you. Rochelle, is there any public comment on any of the department reports?
I have no public comment on any of the department reports.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is the general manager's report.
Thank you. I'll just hit the highlights real briefly here in addition to what's already in the staff report. I think some of these points were already spoken of, so I'll just touch briefly. Logically continues to install the security measures. Richard called out the firewall in his presentation. The SCADA IT master plan is near completion and is expected to be presented at the June board meeting. Actually, we have quite a few items that will be presented at the next month's meeting. They include the annual budget, the employee handbook updates, as well as the financial audit presentation, as well as preparing for the hearings for the sewer service charge billings. Next slide, please. Another matters, the agreements with HDR for the sewer service charge and the sewer connection fee study have been executed. At this point, we're just awaiting a data request from HDR. We have asked that the finance committee participate and assist us with some points and provide some feedback for us. I've lost that on screen, Rochelle.
Yeah, the screen share looks like it's been turned off.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and okay, looks like it's coming back.
Sorry about that. I clicked too fast and it closed it.
Okay. We are starting the recruitment, or have just recently started recruitment for a wastewater treatment plant OIT 123 position. One of the individuals that we had brought on here was not a good fit for the agency, unfortunately. We will be participating on Truckee Day, which is on June 4th. We have made a return to in-person staff meetings. I've made them voluntary, and so far they're working out pretty good. As an update to the Truckee Tahoe Airport District, their GM has retired, and I will be working with Mr. Hardy Bullock moving forward on the agreement. As of this point, they have submitted the parcels to the FAA to review. They've received some feedback on the parcels, the land parcels, with additional information. And as of this point, the airport district's going to have to respond to them. And then once they receive the FAA approval, then we'll be able to get back on doing the legal descriptions for the parcels. And the agency is going through a surplus auction right.
Hey, LaRue, on that airport district agreement, is there a reason we can't be working on like the plats and legals and all the technical documents now, rather than waiting for the FAA and then spending another amount of time after the FAA conversation happens? This thing's been kicking around for like 3 years now, and I just feel like we need to create a sense of urgency in getting this completed.
Right. I think the feedback is, I mean, the stalling is at the FAA. I think the concern is that if we proceed with that and the FAA do not agree with the parcels, then we may have to do some rework on the legal descriptions. I'll reach out to the airport district and see if they want to proceed with it. I'd like to proceed together with them, but I'll go ahead and let them know that we'd like to move faster on that.
Yeah, I just know how these things go. Like FAA takes another 2 or 3 months, and then it takes them 2 months to get on the surveyor's schedule for them to pick it up and start looking at it. And then, it just goes on and on and on. From my perspective, I'd be comfortable engaging the surveyor, having him do the work, recognizing there could be a little bit of modification that needs to happen, but also recognizing that modifications to something that's in that's already pretty well developed should be a lot quicker. So I just think we need to just do everything possible to push this along.
Understood. I'll follow up with the airport district.
Okay.
Dan, thank you very much. I agree with everything you just said.
And then the final point I was going to make was that we are having a surplus auction where we're auctioning off some vehicles, pumps, and there's been quite a bit of interest within staff and outside. So we hopefully that'll be a success for the agency. With that, I just wanted to acknowledge a couple of individuals here. First, Crystal and Michelle for doing the financial audits. They've had to deal with financial audit, in addition, prepare the annual budget. I wanted to thank Vicki. She's taken on almost single-handedly the update to the employee handbook by receiving feedback from staff. And then finally to the IT department for all their work and efforts doing their current job in addition to addressing the SCADA and IT master plan. So kudos to all of them. Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah. Hey, LaRue, also back on the land exchange.
Sure.
I'm assuming there's a lot line adjustment that's going to need to be done. That we're going to be adjusting property boundaries.
Right.
And I know typically those have to be approved by whoever the political jurisdiction is that the property lies within.
Okay.
And so I don't know if that process has been initiated or not, but that would be another parallel track that I think we could get moving.
Sounds good. I'll reach out to Harding.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. With that, I have nothing else to add, gentlemen.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for LaRue on the general manager's report?
LaRue, I'll just say, I appreciate you. He's been sharing some of his communications with staff and with the board, and looked like good communications. I appreciate you encouraging your staff to participate in the local CWA section. I'm just curious, do you have staff over at Safety Day today?
We do have the majority of our staff at Safety Day, the field staff. We do have a couple here just to make sure we have things to address here.
That's super. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other comments from board members, Rochelle, are there any public comments on the general manager report?
There's no public comment.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is an opportunity for any board member to make any comments for the good of the order. Any board comments? Seeing none. That concludes the open session portion of our meeting, and we will now move on to closed session.